Greetings, friends! I've been working on a few new openers for main tank and off tank roles, utilizing double and triple fell cleaves. These openers branch off of the ones listed in my original warrior guide, but I will go slightly more in depth here. I normally don't like burning defensive cooldowns for stacks, but in some cases when you don't need those cooldowns, it is definitely for the best and a pretty good damage increase when fully utilized. There are many factors that should be taken into account before doing these openers, including knowledge of the fight, healer comfort levels, gear levels, and group composition. You may need to move abilities around slightly depending on when raid buffs and debuffs go out. Another factor is ping. Sometimes I find myself being able to fit 2 off GCDs in smoothly, while other times not so well. So if that's the case, try your best to never clip your GCD. But with all that being said, I think this is a solid base to work from when configuring which works best for you and your group. Anyways, let's give it a go. This opener requires a ninja using Shadewalker. If you don't have a ninja and try this shit, Godspeed, because you will probably lose aggro, or at least it will be sketchy as fuck. So first I want to say that I really like using Thrill and Convo either pre-pull or near the start of the pull to maintain your tank status in the opener because of the rapid shift to Deliverance. This allows healers to DPS fully even though you're not in Defiance. However, if there is a sudden cleave like Hydrothermal Missile from A4 Savage or something else from the boss, you can hold off and stay in Defiance for an extra GCD or 2 to soak damage, then switch. Using Thrill and Convo might vary slightly for each encounter, but I highly recommend using them as early as possible to maintain your tankiness in the opener unless you need them later to compensate for your tanking stance or for mechanic damage. You'll also notice that Fracture is used before gaining 5 stacks of Abandon. This is because around this time your raid buffs and potion will be falling off, and you will not have another chance to apply it with all of these buffs. This opener is not recommended for encounters with high physical damage because tanking and Deliverance with raw intuition going is way too good in my opinion to burn for a stack. I'll use Alexander Savage 1-4 as an example. I use this opener on A1 and A4 because there is virtually no physical damage in either turn. In A3 however, I would never burn raw intuition for a stack because of all the physical damage. So more or less, I base which opener I use on each fight. If it's high in magic damage, its value as a cooldown isn't very high. For encounters with high physical damage, raw intuition is way too important to be wasted on a stack. The next opener is a main tank opener without a ninja, using Unchained and 2 Fell Cleaves. This opener burns raw intuition for a stack, but utilizes Defiance with Unchained, and saves Thrill of Battle for later in the encounter. Again, you should only use this opener on encounters filled with mostly magical based attacks, because you should never burn raw intuition for a stack when you can utilize this mitigation. You'll also notice the first Brutal Swing comes a bit early before main. This is to ensure you get a fully buffed Brutal Swing toward the end of your opener. You may be able to fit it in after the first main, but it will be really sketchy and probably clip your GCD. Depending on when raid buffs go out, you may want to delay Berserk for 1 GCD or Fell Cleave before the Fracture and Heavy Swing. That's something you'll have to test with your group because, optimal or not, DPS openers vary slightly from person to person, so the key thing to remember here is line up as many raid buffs and debuffs at once for as long as possible. Now this last opener is another version of the off-tank Triple Dream Cleave, showcased in my Warrior video. However, this one is more focused around lining everything up with raid buffs and debuffs, so pretty much the same except for slight variations on off GCD abilities. In this opener, the first thing I'll say is that I do 3 eye combos. This is dependent on the main tank's gear and skill. You may rip hate if you go eye block eye, so to prevent this, just do 3 eye combos. It may be better depending on the group. However, if the main tank is a fucking Viking badass, do eye block eye because it is more potent. We use Fracture slightly early to make sure it is affected by potion, just like in the main tank Triple Fell Cleave opener. We also use our first Brutal Swing after main because our Zerk is delayed by 2 GCDs, which allows more time to line it up with the other buffs later in the opener. Overall, I think these openers are extremely bursty, while still maintaining a lot of your tanking capabilities, and they're a lot of fun to do. I wouldn't recommend these for early stages of progression, but after you get a feel for the first couple phases of an encounter, it will allow you to plan out your defensive cooldowns in a good way and utilize these. But yeah guys, that's all I got. May your stacks be plenty and your crits be high. Peace.